From the hate crimes ordinance to homelessness to housing to infrastructure, those are some of the issues that Summerville Mayor Russ Touchberry is tackling. I talk one-on-one with the mayor for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Summerville Mayor Russ Touchberry, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you for having me. Really great to be here again, sir.
Yes, I appreciate it greatly. Needless to say, I have to jump into the obvious, which is a big topic right now in the town of Summerville. And let me go back to April 11th, and this is coming from WCPD. Summerville Town Council postpones vote on hate crimes ordinance. And let me go to the actual article. It says this: the town of Summerville has decided to wait before adopting a hate crimes ordinance. Council members voted 4-3 to postpone a vote on whether or not to enact a hate crime ordinance for Summerville at that town council's meeting on Thursday night on April 11th. They said that they actually expect to vote on this matter in May. And I know you told Channel 2 this quote: we have limitations in our state law that we can oppose. From a penalty standpoint, we look at the situation, and this is what we are bound by. So let me ask you this: as I go to this particular ordinance and break it down for you, Mayor, it says this: whereas crimes that are motivated by bias or hate towards any person or persons, in whole or in part, because of the actual or perceived race, color, creed, religion, ancestry, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, physical or mental disability, or national origin of any person, are an affront to the values held by the town. So let me ask you this, Mayor: how is this motivation defined?
That's a great question. Just like any crime, I believe that it has to be beyond a shadow of a doubt to be motivated by those factors. As you know, we can only impose a $500 fine and the 30 days in jail. That's the maximum we're allowed to define. A lot of the folks that commented at our meeting were concerned about how small the fine was, and I agree. I wish it were harsher, but that's the maximum we can do as a town unless state law is changed. I'm very much in favor of a hate and intimidation ordinance. I think it reflects the values of our town. In Summerville, the greatest asset we have are our people, and we want to make sure that everyone feels welcome in our town. So I don't think the postponement means that we aren't done with the conversation. I think the postponement was more to tweak any language we would have to make sure that we have an ordinance that is reflective of our community.
Well, let me ask you this: if this hate crimes and obviously ordinance, I should say, obviously, if it passes, Mayor, how does that then change the values of the town of Summerville?
I don't think it does. I think it basically reflects the values of our town. I think it sends a good, clear message that we want everyone welcome in our town. I think it means that if you're a business owner, an investor, that you are welcome to invest here, and that we are a town where folks can feel safe and included in all of the activities.
Let me go back to that part of the ordinance that I just read. It says, whereas crimes that are motivated by bias or hate towards any person or persons, in whole or in part, because of the actual or perceived race, color, creed, religion, ancestry, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, physical or mental disability, or national origin of any person, are affront to the values held by the town. So in what situations could this be inaccurately applied, Mayor?
You said inadequately applied?
Inaccurately.
Oh, I believe first of all, a crime has to be committed for this to even be considered. And then after the crime has been committed, if it is found to be done because of hate and bias, without a shadow of a doubt, then this new ordinance, if passed, would be enacted.
Well, let me ask you this. I hate asking hypotheticals, but what would happen to a high school kid, Mayor, who got into a fight with a transgender kid over something not even related to being trans, but is framed and pushed like that? Is that kid now going to be labeled as a hate crime offender?
I wouldn't think a scenario like that would be through the investigation would be determined as a hate crime based on that scenario. It has to be solely motivated without a shadow of a doubt.
Now, let me ask you this, because I want to get back to that in just a second. In the actual ordinance that is goes on to say this. Whereas the state of South Carolina has yet to adopt a statewide hate crime legislation, and is only one of two states in the United States who have yet to adopt such protections for its citizens and visitors. So let me ask you this: saying only two states in the United States, does that seem unnecessary to you?
Well, in my mind, I wish the state would address this issue and have a state law legislated. I think that would be the best step. But in the absence of that, we're not going to have that approved this year. So in the absence of that, I think it's good for communities to speak up and make sure that folks feel protected in their community.
So what are the communities in the town of Summerville saying to you right now, Mayor?
I'm hearing both positive communication and concern in regards to the ordinance. And we listen to everybody intently. We've made some adjustments over the time based on any concerns that we had to strengthen the language and make sure it's as clear as possible. As you know, it is a crime has to be committed first, and then this, if it's determined beyond a shadow of a doubt, could be applied to anything that was motivated by bias, hate, anything like that. In any case, as you would know, perfection is not necessarily possible, but we want to strengthen it to the greatest extent possible and make sure it reflects what we want for a town.
With this ordinance, Mayor, what exactly do you want for the town of Summerville?
I want the folks to feel welcome in our town. I want folks to feel safe in our town. And I want investors who may want to come to our town to know that our community does not welcome hate, intimidation, or bias.
You talk about those investors and obviously business owners. How many of them are saying, hey, let me hold on before I make any investment in Summerville before you all make this ordinance pass?
Well, we have heard mostly at the state level some of those. But as you know, the town of Summerville, we're trying to strengthen our economy, support our business community, and we want to take away any deterrent from investors so that our business owners and our property owners have the maximum benefit and maximum opportunity.
So if this ordinance passes, Mayor, what protection do these people have with the town of Summerville?
They have the extra layer of protection that if somebody performs a crime that is hate or bias motivated, that somebody will get an additional charge.
And I want to get back to that too in a second, but let me go back to the ordinance, and I want to break a part of that down again. Whereas the town of Summerville desires to enact a new section of the Code of Ordinances in order to protect its residents and visitors and deter crimes motivated by bias and hate towards any perceived race, color, creed, religion, ancestry, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, physical or mental disability, or national origin of any person, and provides separate appropriate penalties in addition to the punishment for the underlying violation of the ordinance of the town. So anybody knows, Mayor, that a criminal is going to do what they're going to do regardless of the ordinance. So how is this actually going to protect anyone in the town of Summerville?
I believe, as you know, just like what you said, we have speed limit and speed laws, but how many people are following those to the T? Laws in and of themselves don't necessarily prevent crime, do they? As sad as that is. However, there are certain people who may not want a designation being associated with their name for the rest of their life, and they may think twice about committing a crime motivated in that regard. And for the reasonable people who may consider following the rules, we would want to prevent them from taking action or doing anything hate motivated.
Are there any type of hate related or bias related activities going on right now in the town of Summerville?
I'm not aware of anything, and this is more of a proactive approach, and I'm very thankful for that. Our community's really been a great stronghold that watches out for each other, and I'm very proud of our community for that. But no, I'm not aware of anything at this point in time that would be related to this.
I hate to be redundant too, Mayor, but are there any Summerville stats on how many crimes last year would have been categorized actually under the hate intimidation?
No, I haven't seen anything like that at all. No, sir.
Now, also in the ordinance, it reads this: the court may impose community service or participation that is, in an educational program for violation of this section. Any sentence may be suspended upon completion, that is, by the defendant of appropriate education, counseling, or community employment as ordered by the court. So, what are the specifics, Mayor, of the educational program?
I think that program is still something that will need to be defined better. It gives the court an option similar to the option of like pretrial intervention. This gives an opportunity to have someone reform themselves versus having potentially the designation follow them.
And I want to ask you this: who's leading this, and actually, who's actually paying for this, Mayor?
Who's leading the effort for
the program?
The ordinance?
Yes, the program. Yes, sir.
I don't think we've defined that at this time.
Okay. Now, what other re-education programs could lead to this?
I think that would be determined by the court system at this point in time. And since we don't have an ordinance passed, yes, I don't think we have that defined.
Now, if the crimes themselves don't have sufficient punishments, that is, why not push for them to actually be increased?
We would absolutely like to do that. That's something that has to be done at the state legislative level.
Now, Mayor, let me ask you this. Isn't the town of Summerville creating yet another law that only benefits lawyers and wastes precious court resources?
I disagree with that. I know that is a perspective that folks can have, but I disagree with that one.
In what way does this particular ordinance presents a slippery slope towards free speech?
I don't think it does. I don't think there is any First Amendment right here. Folks can say anything that they want to say and are protected with free speech in this scenario. It is if you commit a crime motivated by hate or bias, that is a second designation.
And I hate to be redundant, but what exactly does hate intimidation mean to the average viewer watching this?
Well, I think if you were to represent yourself as someone opposed to another individual only based on those factors listed within the ordinance, and then you committed a crime, I believe that is what I would consider bias.
Now, who is responsible for interpreting that?
That would be the police and the courts, of course.
Now, obviously, a crime is a crime, as I mentioned earlier, Mayor. But adding hate as a motive to enhance the severity is actually a violation of the First Amendment. Is that right?
I'm sorry, someone was speaking behind me. Say that again, sir.
Oh, no worries. I know, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, a crime is a crime. But isn't adding hate as a motive to enhance the severity is actually a violation of the First Amendment?
I'm not certain I see it that way.
Okay. Well, how do you see it?
Well, I see it that if you are performing a crime because someone else is different than you, somebody believes differently than you, somebody skin color is different than yours, or maybe your religious affiliation is different, and you perform a crime solely based on that act, and it's found beyond a shadow of a doubt, I think that's where this ordinance comes into play.
Switching gears, Mayor, to some other things, because I know there's so much going on in the town of Summerville besides this issue. But obviously, you've been as mayor now, elected and sworn in as mayor for the past 4 months. So, in what ways are you engaging the constituents of the town of Summerville?
I'm participating in as many opportunities to get to know our residents and business owners, not only through the Chamber of Commerce, but also local churches have invited me. I'm trying to get out to our festivals and make sure that I'm hearing from our community members. Of course, I'm I've put my cell phone on our town's website, and I encourage folks to reach out. And I just want folks to know that they have a mayor that wants to listen and understand their concerns, and hopefully we can do something about them. We can't solve every challenge, but you can't solve a challenge if you don't know what it is.
And when you're listening and talking with these particular constituents, Mayor, what exactly are their concerns from a residential standpoint?
Well, there are a lot of concerns related to infrastructure, and I'm working hard with our council on a lot of those things. The safety of our pedestrian and bicycle community is paramount. Being able to move through traffic within our town is paramount. We are working on those items as a community. We're also preparing to get a vision plan recreated. About 10 years ago, there was a vision created for our community that required a great deal of public input. We are getting that public input organized this year. We'll have another vision created, and then we're going to work towards prioritizing all of our efforts behind what the people in our community want. That's going to be an opportunity for all of our citizens to reach out and get their voices heard, and I'm excited for that. That'll give us an action plan of what our citizens want. We'll put a strategic plan around that and execute as a council.
And you talk about infrastructure, so let me go to a relevant question here. What is the current total population of the town of Summerville?
Well, it's interesting you asked that. We're about 55,000 people who live in our town, but about 250,000 people have a Summerville postal address.
Right.
So we have a lot of pressure in and around us, not only from our residents, but the 250,000 around us.
And I know all about that because I live right near Summerville. But let me ask you, with that population, is that an increase from a couple of years ago?
It has. We are steadily growing. We're not growing as fast as some areas, but because the growth is happening outside of our boundaries, we feel the pressure of that growth at an alarming pace.
And does that actually equates to an average annual growth rate of what, percentage-wise?
I believe we've been growing at a slower rate than some of the other areas, below 5%. However, some of the larger areas grown by 17% and higher.
Wow. So, Mayor, let me ask you this, Dan. What part of the town's population actually includes people who actually move from an unincorporated part of Dorchester County?
I wish I knew that. That's a great question. I do not know that stat. I'm sorry.
No worries at all. And how many from a different county are actually near Summerville?
Well, Summerville's in all three counties, and we have Summerville addresses in all three counties as well. So we are made up of the Tri-County region for sure.
And where I moved just last year, I'm realizing how close I am to Summerville, and I can go around the corner from my neighborhood, and I'm in Dorchester County. So that's very, very interesting. But what is the biggest demographic of the town of Summerville right now?
The biggest demographic?
Yes, sir.
I would guess probably younger families that have school-age children.
Yeah.
Dorchester School District 2 has a great school program, and I think that attracts kind of the younger families. I believe that's the majority of our makeup are younger families. We also do have some older retirees coming here, but I think probably our largest demographic is the younger family. Summerville is still a little more affordable than other areas of our region, but housing affordability and attainability is really difficult the way prices have been escalating for everybody.
What do you need in the town of Summerville? Is it attainable housing or is it affordable housing?
Well, it really depends on who you ask. I know Craig Logan from the Chamber of Commerce has been working on the regional challenge of housing affordability, and it really comes down to the person who's looking, as well as what options are out there for each level of investment.
What is the town of Summerville investing right now when it comes to housing affordability?
Oh, that's a good question. We have, our design standards are set, but we look at opportunities when folks are creating whether it's apartment developments or housing developments. We always look for opportunities to work with developers on workforce housing. I think the county on their property at 500 North Main has had some discussions about having workforce housing as a part of that redevelopment, and that's within our town. But none of that has been passed or permitted at this time. So all just discussions.
Oh, absolutely. So, Mayor, when you look at the town of Summerville from your perspective, how much land is available for workforce housing versus affordable housing?
It's very limited within the town because we are so constrained. The greatest opportunities are probably outside of the town in unincorporated areas, but we don't have large plots of land within the town anymore. All of those are pretty much filled.
So, what's the ideal location for redevelopment?
Well, that's a good question as well. Infill development in some of our municipal corridors makes sense. But, we don't have large scale tracts of land for redevelopment inside of the town. Most of those would be outside of our community.
So, how do you currently accommodate the Summerville community in an environmentally and physically sustainable manner?
Well, I think a lot of habits have to change, Quintin, when it comes down to that. Folks can't continue to move in our area and then work in the city of Charleston because that means they get on I-26 and their quality of life is eroded because they're in traffic and they're not able to spend time with their families. I think we need to create opportunities for our folks to work and have good, high-paying jobs closer to home, so that they have shorter commute times and maybe reverse commute times. My hope is that we would attract the right investors that would put Class A business space and good, high-paying jobs here locally.
I know I'm probably going ahead of myself, Mayor, but how many of those jobs do you need right now for the town?
Well, unemployment is really low. Everybody has a job, but if somebody were to have the right job closer to their home, I'm sure they would make a switch. And that's what we would try to do. It would be a shifting in the thought process.
And I know you talked earlier about I-26, but also let's talk about Dorchester Road, which I know all about, living near off of Dorchester Road near Summerville. But how do you leverage allocated resources to actually retrofit and examine Dorchester Road?
Well, we are very blessed that the transportation sales tax program was passed last year in Dorchester County. Of course, Charleston County, Berkeley County, and Dorchester County all have transportation sales tax programs. Dorchester Road improvements are one of the highest priority projects that are a part of that, and I know that they are actively working on preliminary engineering studies to help improve that corridor. You are right, that corridor needs some help.
Yeah, Dorchester Road, Ashley Phosphate, all of that over there. But let me ask you this. So, and that, matter of fact, I just passed by yesterday on my run and I saw the big sign that says, obviously, the referendum for the Dorchester District 2 schools are coming up May 19th. So, if that passes, how does that affect that transportation sales tax?
Well, the good thing is it will not affect that. It will not be a millage increase. So, everybody's, what you pay will stay the same for the schools. The school district, that vote of yes gives them the opportunity to leverage future growth and put a bond referendum out so that they can go ahead and start working on the school improvements to fit all the kids that are already here and coming here. They have the data to show how many students are coming where, and they have gotten this down pat. They know where the needs are. They know where they need to put schools. They just need the ability to borrow money in advance to get it done. And as you know, the cost escalation of construction is so expensive. If they don't start now, it's going to cost us a whole lot more in the future.
Wow. So how much money do they actually need to borrow to get these schools built?
I wish I knew the exact figure, but it's very expensive to build a school these days. So hundreds of millions of dollars will have to be borrowed to go ahead and get these projects underway.
And I just wish I had more time in my schedule physically to interview Dr. Roberts about
Hey,
that.
he would be happy to.
Yeah.
He knows it. He knows it by the back of his hand.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly right. So, is there enough land in Summerville to build some new schools there? I know we talked about housing and not having that, but do we have enough land for schools?
These schools will mostly be in unincorporated areas.
Mm.
There may be opportunities where schools will be replaced on the existing site
Right.
with a new school and or improved with existing schools. But most of it will be out where hopefully we can work with developers and identify property with them through the developer agreement. So I'm hopeful for that.
Yes, sir. And with those developers in mind, Mayor, what type of incentives do you want them to bring to the town of Summerville?
What type of what?
Incentives. Yes, sir.
Oh, well, I'm not sure. You know, we always, if it's in the town of Summerville, we always want to find an opportunity for the development to help pay for the needs of our citizens. You know, when it comes down to getting a development to provide land for schools, I think there's a win-win situation there. I think there can be some incentives to help foster that for our school districts.
And when it comes to obviously, the housing and infrastructure, you mentioned obviously pedestrian biking infrastructure in the town of Summerville. What type of incentives do you want those developers to bring to the town for those issues?
Well, we have in our ordinances already that if a development happens, they have to provide the infrastructure around that for our bicycle and pedestrians. But we were talking at our budget retreat last week about other ways to fund those necessary connections to new development, to close the gaps in our sidewalk system, provide for crosswalks and intersection improvements to make things safer.
And that brings me to my next question. How is the town using the volume of traffic and concentration of people to actually drive new development to, say, Oak Brook?
Oh, well, we aren't necessarily driving that development in that direction, but it's naturally occurring, as you see, and there's a lot of growth going that way. But we're not intentionally pushing it in any direction. We're just trying to provide the quality of life needs for our citizens as the growth is occurring.
Where, Mayor, do you see? Well, where can you actually use new interchange, for instance, on Sheep Island to attract jobs to that part of the town?
Oh, I think that's a great opportunity for us. And because the Nexton Parkway interchange, Nexton Parkway and North Maple Street are all new improvements, and that is an area where I believe our new next gateway into town is going to be along that corridor from I-26 into town. I see great job opportunities, mixed-use housing opportunities, and commercial opportunities, so people can get their services, open their businesses, and get their needs met closer to home.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this then, Mayor. What's more ideal for Oak Brook? Is it a mixed-use town center or a natural resource destination?
I think both, because we have the Ashley River there, Colonial Dorchester State Park. There's some really great resources we need to preserve. We need to preserve green space. We have several parks along the Ashley River. I think that is certainly something that needs to be preserved and utilized as a resource. But we also have some of the older shopping centers that may need to be repurposed into mixed-use development where people can live, work, and play right there. And then they'll have access to our Sawmill Branch Trail and all of those parks along the Ashley River.
So how many of those particular areas can be redeveloped into mixed use right now?
It really depends on the property owners themselves. Those things are extremely costly, and the property owners have to be willing to either sell or develop their own property that way. As you know, we're in a strong property owner right state, and I'm a firm believer in that. But when opportunities present itself, I think there's a market for those reinvestments.
Well, then, how do you leverage municipal infrastructure to attract private investment?
I think the greatest example of what we're doing there is along Main Street from the railroad tracks to Highway 78 coming out of our Hutchinson Square. We're doing what's called the Main Street Resiliency Project. We're partnered with the state legislative delegation who helps fund some of this, our county partners with the transportation sales tax. And we are extending the beauty of the Hutchinson Square area, those 5 blocks, making it more walkable, putting our utilities underground, creating an area where people want to bike and walk, and they're safer to do that, in order that businesses would want to invest along that corridor and create job opportunities for our citizens right here at home.
So, in what way do you collaborate with those major employers and educators to actually address those workforce skill shortfalls?
I think we utilize our Chamber of Commerce partners. We communicate what we're trying to accomplish. We also have a community and economic development director who is, focused to help us on that. But if we work with all of our partners through economic development, through the Chamber of Commerce, and through entities like Summerville Dream, we get our message out. The right investors will find us as well.
Yeah, Summerville Dream is a great nonprofit organization. And speaking of which, Mayor, you mentioned Hutchinson Square. So, what broad public-private partnership would actually be ideal to maintain the town's historic significance?
Oh, well, I think our ordinances help a great deal with our historic significance, as well as our historic overlay district, where development that happens within our historic area has a strict set of rules and has an oversight with our Board of Architecture review. I feel like that is the way to preserve it, is through our ordinances, so that folks who own property know exactly what the expectations are. And we want to preserve everything we can within our community.
And quickly, let me go to obviously South Point. As you know, there are some reportedly there are homeless encampments there. Do you know, Mayor, how many complaints has the town received about this in the past 6 months or so?
I don't know the number of complaints, but I will say our unhoused population is a focal point in a lot of discussions, and trying to find help to assist them, get the resources connected to them. But it's not safe or healthy for them to be there. It's not safe or healthy for our community as well. So we want to make sure that we work with our regional partners like the City of North Charleston, City of Charleston, and find regional solutions, because if we, affect them in one area, they'll just move somewhere else. And we really need to connect them to the resources and help they need. And I'm committed to work with our regional partners to do that.
In what way does the town assess those actual campsite conditions?
We do have law enforcement that goes out and patrols areas of our community, and they try to connect resources to help those in need in those areas. We also work to support nonprofits who are doing work for our homeless, like DCCO, right, with Hope and Hope's House. We try to help assist them in their mission. And then, of course, we work with our Council of Governments and regional partners to try to help. But yes, we have law enforcement has gone out and tried to make connections with that community so that they have a relationship and can help connect resources to them.
So, Mayor, I want to ask you this. How many crews under a contract with the town are looking at these particular campsites?
I'm not aware of any crews working on that right now.
Do you know what's the timetable for actually removing trash from this particular site?
No, but if the way I understand it, if they are found to be living in the town of Summerville, they are asked to be moved along. So, some of the folks live in unincorporated areas and not in the town. Yeah. But we try to help connect them to resources or move them out of our community, unless they have permission to be there.
How many of those people actually have permission to be there versus the ones who are just there?
I'm not aware of any that have permission to be there, but that's always an option.
Okay. And how much is this all costing the town of Summerville to remove the campsites, from those locations?
I don't know if we've quantified it, but any time that our resources are used, they do have a cost associated with it.
Wow. Will that okay? With that cost, does that how will you fit that into the town's budget?
Well, I think that goes under the operations,
Mm,
in our police operations budget, and it's the cost of protecting and serving our community.
absolutely. Well, Somerville Mayor Russ Touchberry, thank you so much for your time, and again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure.
Likewise.